a Japanese remake of the OG escape room. Well, this should be interesting. Cube 2021 is brought to us by director Yasuhiko Shimizu, bet I nailed that shit, and stars Masaki Okada, Takumi Sato, and Masaki Suda. In this remake, without remembering how they got there, several strangers awaken in a prison of cubic cells, some of them booby-trapped. The prisoners must use their combined skills if they are to escape. So Cube 2021 is the Japanese remake of the Canadian 1997 sci-fi classic. In the original, we had a group of people that woke up in this strange place not knowing how they got there. It's a series of almost identical looking rooms with the exception of the color of each room that just keeps going and going and going endlessly, it would seem. Problem is that some of these rooms have deadly booby traps and it seems as if it's at random. So we follow this group of very different personalities as they try and figure out the cube and how to escape. And that's pretty much the synopsis of this film, except it's in Japanese now. Now this isn't like a beat for beat remake of the original film, but there are a lot of similarities between the two, which makes sense because it's a remake. We've got 6 different people with 6 different personalities. Some of these personalities end up being dangerous. The bulk of the movie is these people trying to get along and figure out this cube, and as they go along, they start to figure out some things to clue them into which way to go and what rooms are booby trapped. Tensions rise, and some characters start to take on some nefarious roles. If you've seen the original Cube, you know what to expect here. Now, the original Cube was an amazingly original movie, but it was also a very simple movie that had a lot of depth to it. They took a very simple premise and got all they could out of it and did a fantastic job with it. And this movie follows suit for a good portion of the runtime. It's not reinventing the wheel, and to go ahead and answer the question whether it's better than the original or not, no, it's not as good as the original, but it is a fairly worthy successor. Better than the 2 sequels, that's for damn sure. Much like the original film, this one keeps everything veiled in mystery too. We do get some hints of things, and we have our characters sitting there theorizing as to what could be going on, but we're never given a specific reason as to why this has happened. And I think this was a really smart direction to go. One of my biggest fears was that this movie was going to try and over-explain things like the original Cube sequels did. When it loses some of that mystery and explains too much away, it's nowhere near as fulfilling. And that was one of the things that this movie did right. It never gives us those answers because that's not what this movie's about. Our characters are very similar to the ones that we got in the original film. They're not the exact same thing. They're not carbon copy, but we have a lot of the same clashing personalities like we did last time. It was fun once again to see characters going from room to room trying to figure out if they can outsmart these traps. And speaking of the traps, yes, they are back and they're pretty good. Now they do vary in quality this time around a bit. The first few traps we get to see were actually pretty cool because they were kind of a slight tweak on what we had gotten in the other film. And I did like this. I liked how they took our expectations and they did fulfill those, but they also tweaked it just enough to make it a bit fresh. The first kill of the movie in particular, you think it's gonna be one thing, but it's not quite, but it is quite the callback to that thing you think it's gonna be if you've seen the original film. Now the final third to second half of the film, things start to get a bit shaky. Some of the traps aren't quite as interesting, and some of them just don't make any fucking sense whatsoever. Especially the last trap that we see in the film. It kind of defies all logic. We got like this spiky thing that does kind of like this Christmas tree flare thing or something. That's not really what it is, but that's just what comes to mind when I think about it. Anyway, you'll know what I'm talking about when you see it. And that part, while it was a little out there, I was okay with, but after that, it evolves and does more stuff and even goes places that I don't think it's supposed to be able to go. And this is where I had an issue with it because it kind of broke all the rules that had been set up with the film so far. It's almost like the trap became sentient just at the end of the movie for plot convenience alone. Also, there are some things that happen closer to the end of the film that just don't really make any sense whatsoever under the slightest bit of scrutiny. Case in point, we have a character that is shown something from their past. Now, this is something that has been referenced from flashback snippets throughout the film, and at this point in the movie, we, the viewer, get to see the whole thing happen. This character is seeing it as well, and I'm fine with that if we're just getting a peek inside their brain. My problem was that all the people around this character could see this thing as well, and as soon as I saw that, I thought to myself, whoever it is that's in charge of this cube thing, how exactly did they get that footage? How are they showing this to everyone? I don't really want to go much further with it for fear of ruining things, but it just doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's kind of an important part of the film. Some of the decisions decisions that our characters start to make in the latter part of the film also don't make any sense whatsoever, especially considering they've made better decisions up to this point in the film. It just felt like the movie got a bit sloppy closer to the end. Now, I will say at the very end of the film, they do bring it back around and tighten it up a bit. I did like the way that the movie ended. It does have a similar ending as to the original film, but they do add a bit more to it. And when I saw that they were going beyond that ending just a bit, I started to get scared and say, oh shit, here we go. They're gonna explain too much and it's gonna kind of ruin all of it. But no, they don't. They still preserve that air of mystery. They just add a little bit of extra something into it. And this was an addition to the ending that I actually did like over the original film's ending. The original film's ending is very divisive. Now, I personally think that the original film's ending was a good ending. I couldn't think of another way that it needed to end, really. But I know that it did bother some people because it didn't really give you much. It left you hanging. The ending that they provide for us here actually does give you just a little bit more, but not too much. And it does manage to still be ambiguous like the original, yet a bit more satisfying. Now, one place they probably could have done a bit better would be our character. I didn't hate any of these characters, but none of them were very memorable. For their part, they do try to make these characters more interesting, giving them backstory and getting you invested in them. They are just not very successful at it. It's fine following them, but beyond one character in particular, none of them really stand out from one another. One place that they did really well here, though, is the look of the film. This is a really good looking movie. Much like the original, the vast majority of the movie takes place in one single room. Even when they go to another room, it's the same room, they just change the color of the lights in the background. This sounds like it could get boring, but they do a really good job of making each of these rooms seem very different from each other. And overall, the movie just looks really high quality. I don't know how much money it took to make it, but it looks like there was some money behind this thing. However, one place I was a bit disappointed. Not totally disappointed, but a bit disappointed would be the gore. The original film wasn't like a gore fest, but it definitely had some pretty gory moments in it. When these traps would get sprung, somebody was getting fucked up, and you usually got to see it in all its gory glory. Here, we don't get nearly as many of those gory kills. We get a couple of them, and especially the one in the beginning, they're pretty cool. But there's actually one in particular that would have been pretty gory that is totally off screen. We get to see blood and all that, but we don't get to see it happen, nor do we even get to see the aftermath of it. And honestly, I was expecting more out of this Japanese version of the film. Japanese horror films are known for being pretty ultra graphic, over the top violent. This film that is coming from a movie that is known for being pretty violent and gory just isn't really. It's fairly tame in comparison. I mean, I didn't hate it. It doesn't have to be gory and grisly, but admittedly, when it comes to these types of movies with these booby traps, it's kind of entertaining to see all that. That's one of the reasons you watch these things. So when it doesn't give you as much of that as you feel should be there, you feel a little bit let down. Guys, Cube 2021 was a fairly enjoyable flick. It took a lot of the good things from the original film and incorporated them here and gave us just a bit more without ruining the mystery. Most of the traps are creative and entertaining, and they retain the really cool, interesting story from the original. Now, the characters are a bit flat, the gore is lacking a bit more than I was expecting, and the majority of that third act is pretty messy. But even with all that said, they did a pretty decent job of adapting this classic, making it absolutely worth streaming.
Across the street.
If you're a fan of the original Cube, I think you'll find something to enjoy here. It's not perfect, and in comparison to the original, no, it's not as good, but it is worthy. So there it is, guys, my review of Cube 2021. If you enjoyed and want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you want to help out the channel, check out my Patreon in the description below and become a jarhead and get some of the awesome benefits that go along with that, like these guys. And possibly check out my top tier and become a bad motherfucker like my man Greg C and Dragon Khan. If you like video games or you just want to see some dumbass play them really bad, then check out my new gaming channel, Jag. Link in the description. Any support is appreciated. If you liked what I had to say, give me a like. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, stay sexy, Osaka. Now, I have no idea how successful this movie was in Japan when it released, and it's coming here to the States real soon. But they did leave it wide open for a sequel, and I am curious to know if it is successful enough if we're going to get that sequel. And more importantly, if we do get a sequel to this film in this universe, are they just gonna kind of go off and do their own thing? Or are they gonna follow the template of the sequel to the original Cube, Cube 2 Hypercube? It's a whole bunch of fucking cubes. I don't know, but if they do go down that road, I just kind of hope they go off and do their own thing down their own path, because Cube 2 Hypercubed is about as stupid as the fucking name sounds.